What's up, Fuse? What's up, Fuse? How is everybody doing tonight? Man, let's give it up for the band one more time for leading us in worship. I'll tell y'all what, man, when we get to see students come up here and lead moments like that, we are so blessed to be in a place where we have students like y'all on fire for Jesus. That is exactly what we're doing here. We are building a culture, building a community, and building a church on the next generation, which is you. So let's keep it going tonight. Can we do that, students? All right, tonight, I love the energy over there from the middle school boys. All right, yep. I might have to correct it later on, but it's fine right now. Tonight, we're continuing our series, Old School, where we're going through the book of Judges, and we're going to talk about all these different stories and how we can learn from the past. And the title of tonight's message is that the world has changed, but God hasn't. And as we go through tonight's message, I'm going to show just how much that is true. But before we get into that, I want to present something for you to think about. When we look at the story of Judges and the Bible as a whole, I think sometimes as young people, we can get into a mindset to where that was so long ago, right? How can that apply to my life? What can I learn from something that happened so long ago? And I think this same mindset can apply to other areas as well. There's a social media trend going around right now called We Done with the 90s. And basically what it's talking about is that Michael Jordan wasn't as good as history says. And listen, I'm not up here to support it, all right? All right, before you come, don't come for me, all right? But I've just seen this going around, and it's a lot of these youngsters saying that Michael Jordan doesn't have a left hand, or that Michael Jordan was playing against plumbers. And I'm like, it's Michael Jordan. Like, what are we talking about? But I think sometimes as young people, I think we can look back and say, we know better. I think sometimes we can look at today's NBA, and I'm going to show some video clips in a second, and we think sometimes we know better. And I'm not trying to come after y'all. I'm not saying all of y'all think like that, but I think sometimes we can get into a mindset to where we think we know better than what history says. And I think the way to combat that is saying, I have something to learn. And so as we go through tonight's message, I want to encourage and I want to challenge you to approach this night like you have something to learn, all right? And so as we get into tonight's message, please have that mindset. But looking at the 90s, looking at basketball back then, I think we can't start at the 90s. We have to start at the beginning of the NBA. And personally, I'm a huge basketball fan since I was a kid. Basketball has been such a big part of my life. And so I wanted to go back to the beginning, all right? So let's show the picture of the 60s playing basketball, okay? That's what it looked like back then, all right? The world was still in black and white, okay? Nobody could see color. And they wore shorts that were criminally small, okay? Criminally. Okay, let's show the 80s now. Let's show the 80s, the progression of events. Who can name these two players? I need hands. I need hands. Do I have any hands? No? Okay. Carter, give me one. Dominique Wilkins. All right, I need girls. You get a chance here. Larry Bird, Larry Legend. Yes, good job, good job. All right, next one. Let's just show MJ up there. Come on. His airness, exactly. And let's show the next picture of MJ just to show, 1, 2, 5, 6. Listen. It's 6 rings, okay? There's no other argument, okay? He has 6 rings. Let's look at the next picture and I'll just prove this, all right? Kobe and Shaq, okay? Dynamic duo, right? Amazing players. But did they win 6 rings, okay? Next picture. That's Steph Curry, all right? Steph Curry is a great player, but he ain't got 6 rings, all right? Personally, my favorite player of all time King James in this next picture. And see, you know the greatest players, did you hear the boos over here? The greatest players have the most haters, all right? And LeBron James, oh, that man, But the problem is, my king LeBron James does not have 6 rings, all right? He just doesn't. And so the argument for the GOAT has to stay with the man. Let's put it back up there. Show me MJ with those 6 rings. Come on. I mean, you can't beat that. You can't beat that. But the thing about basketball is, because I think what I've seen, bring it back in, I think what I've seen is that people will go find like the worst plays of MJ's career and then say, like, this is who MJ was. But it's like you do that for any player and it'll show a bad mixtape, right? So I think the game of basketball, it evolved. Over time, it has changed. It's grown. People have gotten better. The sport has gotten bigger. So watch this clip of basketball in the 1950s real quick. A granny shot free throw. Where's the man going? Turnover. Nah. Pass out. Bang out. No, not at all. Not at all. I'm not gonna let, this play is kind of clean, I can't lie. Okay, boy. It's like, that's kind of clean. He hit that, right? But back then, right, that was the pinnacle. Like, that was the NBA. But look at today's basketball, look at today's world. Let's show the clip that we got from a game a couple weeks ago. Golly! Oh my gosh. Woo! One more time. Watch the left hand. Oh, he pokes him right there in the eye. Disgusting, right? Just disgusting. I mean, caught a body. I mean, that was a wild play. But look at the differences, right? Look at the differences. The game has grown, right? It's a different game. But the thing is about basketball is that although the game has changed, the process is still the same. That the ball still has to go through the hoop, right? It has to go in. Yeah, I practiced a lot, you know what I'm saying? I cannot miss a shot this close. It's a 7-foot rim, okay? But the goal is the same, right? Whoever puts the ball in the basket the most times is going to win the game, right? You have to have the most points by the end. And I think what we have to realize is that with the Bible, with God's word and who God is, that we think because the world has changed over time, that what we are responsible to do as Christians, as human beings, has also changed. But the world changed. That doesn't mean that God changed. It doesn't mean that God's word changed. It doesn't mean what we're called to has changed. So let's get into tonight's message. Going through the book of Judges, we're going to see a cycle that the Israelites get stuck in. Everybody say cycle. So look at this graphic real quick. Throughout the book of Judges, it says that again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Another verse, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And again, and again, and again, throughout the whole book, we see the Israelites continually falling into sin, choosing the wrong things. And I can't help but ask all of you, have you ever found yourself stuck in this cycle? Have you ever found yourself stuck in this kind of situation where you keep falling and falling and falling, and you try to get better, but as time goes on, you fall and fall again? I think we can relate to the feeling of being stuck in a cycle. And the story we're going to look at today, it starts with this cycle. It says in Judges 3:7-8, the Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They forgot the Lord their God and worshiped the Baals and the Asherahs. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he sold them to Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Aram Naharaim. And the Israelites served him 8 years. Now, before we get into the meat of the message, I know I just read some big names, and everybody's like, well, I'm checking out. But These names actually have significance, okay? So just bear with me, because I kind of nerded out a little bit here, okay? So Cushan Rishathaim, okay? His name is Cushan. He's a king. But the Rishathaim part means wickedness. Okay, so now go through this with me, okay? Stay with me. The people of God are now serving wickedness. The people of God are now in a place where they are working for wickedness, where they're now slaves to wickedness. And mind you, this is the same nation, Israel is, okay? The same nation who has seen God do miraculous things. They were stuck in slavery before this for 400 years, and God rescued them. And as they were escaping, he split an ocean, and they walked across on dry ground. When they went and faced enemies that seemed to be unbeatable, that had walls that were so high that they couldn't even imagine seeing over them, God broke down these walls through the obedience of his people. These people have seen amazing. And yet, where do they find themselves in this story? Serving wickedness. I wonder if we ever find ourselves working for the wickedness of the world. Because in Romans 7:15, Paul talks about this concept of, he says, I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate. I think when we get stuck in this cycle, when we find ourselves serving the wrong things and doing the wrong things and walking in the wrong things, many of us can relate to this verse, for I do not understand it. I know what I want to do, but then what I actually do is different. And as we look at the concept of them forgetting and then forsaking God, we're going to see how this happens. How do we get to a place where we're working for all the wrong things? But before we get there, I need a little help to illustrate this point. So y'all invite Nolan out here with me to help me get into this point. Oh, yeah. Nolan brought this straight from his house. He uses it pretty often. What I want to talk about, all right? What I want to talk about is that if this is our life, let's say, okay? This represents our life. And let's say the Israelites' life. They always start out in a good place, right? They're over here, they're doing what they got to do, okay? God is the goal, and they are the basketball. And they're doing the right things. They're doing the right things because they know the obedience, right? The obedience that they have is what they are called to. But what happens over and over and over again is, although they know that this is the way, right? Like in basketball, this doesn't change. This is the way to win. They know God is the way to win. But what starts to happen is that they slowly get pulled in a different direction. They slowly turn their back to God. It's just like they forgot God. They forgot the miracles he's performed. They forgot the things they have done. And they find themselves worshiping other things in their lives. And I think what slowly happens is they were over here. They started over here. But then as time passes and they slowly get further and further and further, they forget where their goal is. Their back is turned, and they're trying to play on this. But this wasn't meant for this. This was meant for that. And so what slowly starts to happen is they're falling into the wrong things, worshiping the wrong things, because they're trying to recreate this experience. They're trying to find this win. But all they're doing is throwing a basketball into a hoop that they can't make it in. I think sometimes God's looking down on us like, what are you doing? What are we doing here? Like, I got it. I got it teed up for you. It's at 7 feet, okay? You can do windmills on that thing. But you're trying to shoot on this? Like, I got so much more for you over here. I got a bigger plan for you over here. But you're stuck shooting on something like this because it's the appearance of easier, isn't it? You look at these two goals, and your first thought's going to be, that'd be easier to shoot on. But if your life is this, just because it appears easier does not mean this is what it was meant for. And so as we look at this story and look at the Israelites, how they forget and they forsake. When I say forsake, it means that you start putting someone or something else in first place. And I think sometimes in our lives we start trying to put relationships in first place. We start trying to put glory, our glory, in first place. It's about what I can do. It's about what I can achieve. Or we start to put status in first place, right? How many likes did I get on that post? If it is not 100 plus, then I must not be worth anything. I mean, I know when I say it out loud, it sounds silly, right? Because we know that this is the thing. But when we start thinking about it, we start looking at our lives, right? How many of us look like this? I want you to burn this picture in your head, okay? How many of us look like this? This is what we're playing on. When the goal is right there, all you got to do is turn. But you're standing here, trying all the wrong things, worshiping all the wrong things, forgetting what God has done. I think so many of us have experienced God either at camps, at worship nights, at conferences, maybe on a Wednesday night, on a Sunday morning, maybe just in your alone time with God, right? But we start to forget. And I think the antidote, the way to combat forgetting God is gratitude. And what I want to share with y'all is that constant gratitude is what builds consistent remembrance. Meaning that the more I think, the more I consider how much God has done for me in my life, the easier and the more I will remember God. I will be connected to God, in relation to God, and I'll find myself on the right side of the goals. Do you see? You have to be consistent in your gratitude. It has to become a mindset that you are telling yourself, have I been grateful today? God, I haven't said it yet today. Thank you. Just say thank you. I'm telling you, what that does to your heart, what it does to it's different. It's different. And when it comes to being consistent and being constant, I think of a story. When I was a kid, I was playing basketball, and my dad was one of those like sports dads. You know, he's going to make sure his son's out there, doing right by the family. You know what I mean? But for the life of me, I could not dribble with my left hand. Like, it was like the toughest thing. I could not learn the left. Anybody else? That left hand? I mean, it's hard, right? It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. So my dad would find these YouTube videos, okay? And he'd make me study them and memorize them. And then I'd go out in the backyard, and we had this tiny little porch. And he'd make me practice dribbling for hours. I mean, hours on end. I'm out there, I'm going, I'm trying. I'm doing all I can. It's a little spider thing. I can't do it now. Okay, don't ask me to. But he'd make me practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. And slowly over time, I saw that I was developing a left hand. I was getting better at that skill. And that same concept is exactly what I'm talking about here. It's the consistency of something that builds the strength of something. And so being consistent in our gratitude is what builds the strength in our relationship with God. But secondly, we see that the Israelites start to worship, they start to forsake, abandon God. And I think what slowly happens is that maybe we come to church on a Wednesday night, right? Like you're here tonight. And you hear a message, or you have a small group, or a worship song just hits different. And you're feeling like, okay, like, all right, me and God, we're back. We're good. But then Thursday morning rolls around, all right? You get out of bed, you stub your toe immediately, You try to go to school and be the godly light that we talk about, but man, someone starts making jokes and you can't help but make jokes, right? Everybody else is saying something, so you join in. I think what we don't fully maybe dive into is the list of priorities in our head. Because if our priorities are out of whack, if they're not aligned with God, number one, then it can be easy to start forsaking God. It can be easy to start worshiping the wrong things. And what it led the Israelites to was working for the wicked, was being slaves to something that they never intended to be slaves to. So what do you do when you find yourself stuck in a moment like this, stuck in a feeling like this? It says in Judges 3:9, but when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the people of Israel. Now, notice, they cried out to the Lord, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you look at verse 8, it says that the Israelites served this wickedness, this king, this evil king for 8 years. For 8 years, they served him. They waited 8 years to cry out to God. And I just wonder how many of us are waiting to cry out to God. That we're in a season where we're going through it. We're experiencing that cycle. We can't seem to break it. But we keep saying, no, I'm going to wait to do the God thing. I'm going to wait. Maybe when I'm in college, I'll figure out the God thing. Maybe once I have a family, I'll figure out the God thing. Once I overcome this struggle, then I'll figure out the God thing. But I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And we continue to choose the pain. We continue to choose the wrong side because we think waiting is what's going to do it. We think waiting is the right move. The Israelites waited 8 years to cry out to God. How much longer are you going to wait to cry out to God? How much longer are you going to wait to humble yourself and say, you know what? I don't have all the answers. God, I don't know what to do. We have to approach our struggles with humility, accepting and admitting that we don't have all the answers. But I think sometimes we get a little procrastinative, right? Anybody here a procrastinator? Anybody here? Everybody raise your hand. Come on. I know that I've heard stories like this, and I may have done this a few times when I was a teenager. You ever heard of someone like waiting till the very last minute to tell their parents they have a project due the very next day? Who's done that in here? Let's just be honest, okay? Exactly. You're like, I got a whole diorama. I need a triple poster board with stickers and essays. And Mom, it's due tomorrow. It's 10 p.m. You think Hobby Lobby's still open? And your parents look at you like, child, what? What do you think? How do you think this is going to work out, right? But I'll tell you, sometimes those parents, they find a way, don't they? I mean, they find a way to throw something together, and you'll get a strong C, but it's better than an F, right? I mean, come on. But I think we often procrastinate so many things. And I would hate for you to procrastinate God working in your life. I'd hate for you to wait until there's mistakes that you can't come back from. I'd hate for you to wait until your family is wondering, looking for hope because you waited to get this right. It's time to start thinking about those things. To think about your future, to think about what it's going to mean to have this right later on down in life. Now, I know this message may be a little hard to swallow and hard to deal with and wrestle with, but I do want to end on hope. Because it says that the people of Israel, although they waited 8 years, I'm not here to bash that. We all struggle with this. But it says that they did cry out. It may have taken you a while, but if it ends in a cry out to God. Let's watch what happens. It says the Lord raised up a deliverer for the people of Israel who what? Saved them. It may have taken a while, and it may have brought you to this moment, but if you'll be willing to cry out, deliverance is coming. That change happens when you say, God, I need you. God, I know I don't have the answers. God, I know I don't know left from right, up from down, but God, I'm crying out tonight. That's when change happens. That's when deliverance is on the way. And I showed you at the beginning the cycle, right? The cycle of then continually choosing the wrong things. But let's look at the end of some of those stories. It says multiple times when the people of Israel cried out, the Lord what? Raised up a deliverer. Again, he raised up a deliverer. He subdues the enemy. The land became peaceful. Another verse, the Lord handed them over. So deliverance happens when the cry out is done. That the cycle is broken through the cry out of God's people. So tonight, students, do you need to cry out? Are you in a place? Are you in a position? Are you in the same struggle where you need God? Where you need to break free from this continual struggle, this continual problem. It says in Psalm 34:18, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. Tonight he is near. And he will save your crushed spirit. You see, in basketball, the game didn't change. The game changed, but the process is the same, right? A bucket is a bucket. That's what matters. The ball going in the hoop. It doesn't matter how it all went down, as long as it goes through. That's what matters. I don't care how much you've messed up, how long it's taking you to get here. If you would be willing to cry out, faith is faith. God is still God. The world may have changed, but it has not changed. The word is still the word. Faith is still faith. Prayer is still prayer. So where are you at tonight? What do you need to cry out for? Do you need to cry out for freedom or cry out for peace? Cry out for love or cry out for purpose? But students, don't miss your moment. Don't procrastinate this decision, because although you may have forgotten him again and again, when you cry out, he's willing to forgive you again and again. Although you went back again and again, when you would just cry out, he's willing to welcome you back again and again as his son and his daughter. But it starts with you. Let's stop taking his grace for granted. Let's humble ourselves and be willing to cry out to God to get back on the right side of life. Let's pray. At this time, I'll have the small group leaders head to the back of the room behind your sections. God, we just come before you, humbled, willing, and looking for something more. God, I pray for all the students in the room that I don't know what they're going through. I can't know the struggle, but God, I know that we are all human. And because of that, we are all dealing with something. But God, I pray that these students know that they don't have to do it alone. They don't have to carry the weight alone. That God, this place is meant for community. It's meant to bring them closer to you. So God, I pray there's any student in this room who needs to cry out to you tonight, who needs that deliverance, who needs to be saved, who needs to be set free. God, I pray that they know this is their time. I pray they know that this is right now, to not put it off anymore. And there's any student in here who either needs to say for the first time, God, come into my life, or you need to say, God, I'm coming back. I ask that they raise their hand at this moment. I see that hand. I see your hand. I see your hand. God, I pray as they raise their hands, God, and they admit and they humble themselves to you. God, they know that you're just one prayer away. So students, repeat this prayer to me. If you raise your hand or you didn't raise your hand, God, I need you. God, I know I've messed up. I know I've been stuck in the cycle. I know I've gone back again and again. But God, I believe that what you can do is bigger than it all. I believe that you can save my soul. And God, I want to choose not to be perfect, but to follow you, to continually put you first and chase after your heart. Amen. Now, students, at this time, we have our small group leaders in the back. If you need to talk to someone about what's going on in your life, if you need to talk through the decision you just made, I beg you, I plead you to go find a leader and talk to them about what's going on. So at this time, we're going to worship. You're welcome to stand. We're going to sing, and we're going to have this time of prayer and finding our small group leaders.